Do you know, yesterday evening at 5 o'clock, I wandered into the kitchen and Radio 4 was on. I don't know why, mate, but it was.
That's a mistake.
And they were talking about a woman who'd been asked where she was from. And I went out, did some light shopping, you know, took the dog for a walk, came back, and they were still talking about it. And people were saying, she asked her where she'd come from. And there was outrage, and Evan Davis was crying, I think.
Yes,
you know,
he does that a lot.
He does that a lot. Later, you know, after the football, 10 o'clock news, there's Hugh Edwards crying about someone who'd been asked where they're from. It's just remarkable, mate.
It really is. It really is. I mean, I said to Isabel Oakeshott this morning that the furore and the reaction to the story is actually a better story than the story, because it's nonsense, isn't it?
It is utter nonsense. And if you look at the charity which this woman works for, it says very clearly on the front page, we are of African heritage.
Yes.
Why couldn't she just say that?
Right.
Why couldn't, when she was asked? It's there on her website. I'm of African heritage.
Yes.
You know, knock me down with a feather.
Yes.
You know, are you?
I don't really think. I don't think Lady Hussey's signing up for sort of, you know, one of these fringe right-wing groups anytime soon. I think she's unfortunately caught herself in a stramash, as we would say in Scotland, where I'm not from. Before you start, but you know, it's unfortunate for her. And I was a bit disappointed with Prince William, to be honest, and the way that he suddenly sort of threw his own godmother under the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, no, him and Charles, of course. They acted far too quickly. They're supine, pusillanimous, and I have no time for them at all.
No.
Meanwhile, Mike, it's all very well you saying you don't use the postal service. Up here, it's all we have, all right? It's all we have. For our sacks of salt to be delivered, you know, for whatever it is we need.
Yes.
We need the postal service. It's just like when I hear those debates in London about the cashless society, there are still plenty of businesses in my local village which won't take a card. There's none which won't take money.
Yes. Well, I mean, up in Scotland they use it a lot as well, because they have to nurse all that wrath that they've got, don't they? And you have to get it sent somehow. Right. Yeah. And the best way is through the post.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I suppose so. Do you get your heroin delivered through the post up there? I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's probably on the state, no doubt. I mean, what was that thing the heroin substitute used to go? I used to go into, if you go
methadone, yes.
Yeah, I'd go into the chemist because I had a son born in Glasgow, and you'd go into the chemist to get some baby-related thing. You'd have to wait behind about 5 or 6 people in the methadone queue, which was quite perilous apart from anything else. This would be about sort of 11 o'clock in the morning, you know.
Yeah, they should change it, really. They should sell the methadone in Greggs.
Or Weatherspoons.
Yeah, or Weatherspoons. Yeah.
It's actually, I don't know if you have it, it's a delicacy in the North East, but in Glasgow, one of the big sellers was macaroni pie in Greggs, which was hideous. I don't know, you've got pasta. I'll make some macaroni cheese and put some pastry around it.
Yeah, well, they do that, don't they? I mean, up here we've got the local delicacy is potato in a pie.
Yes. It's nothing else.
Potato pie, which is a bit of cheese sometimes. That's about your lot.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about something far more straightforward and straight up, and that would, of course, be the World Cup. Currently, the World Cup of hypocrisy, as I've been calling it, which is fantastic.
Hilarious, isn't it? Absolutely hilarious. You see the protester who ran on the pitch? I wrote about it in the Sun this morning. Yeah. He was protesting in a game between Portugal and Uruguay. He decided to make the point that we should support Ukraine.
Yeah.
And gay people.
Yes.
And Iranian women.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the Portuguese, well, what have we done?
Yeah, it's a sort of one-size-fits-all protest, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. It's become absurd. And I think John Barnes got it right when he was writing for The Times. But it's also rude. It's rude to the Qataris, particularly over the LGBTQI stuff. You know, whether you like it or not, and I kind of boycotted the World Cup because I don't like the fact that, 6,000 people were killed building those stadiums.
No.
So I wasn't going to go
Although
out
the official line is it's only 3, so the truth may be somewhere in between.
Yeah, well, or it may be a lot more according to Amnesty International.
Yeah.
But then they always say that. And yet, there are 69 countries in the world which criminalise homosexuality.
Yes.
There are only 24 countries in the world which recognise same-sex ceremonies.
Yeah.
You know, so we would be playing endless round robins against Denmark and Uruguay if we were to sort of refuse to play against any teams which didn't take an enlightened liberal attitude towards LGBTQI issues.
But of course, it's brilliant, this World Cup as well, because it's confused a lot of people. Because, you know, while what you've said is entirely correct, there are people on the left who are saying, oh, we shouldn't be attacking Qatar because of the exact same reasons as you've just mentioned, apart from because Britain is just as bad. Sex marriage legal. You know, when England won the World Cup in 1966, homosexuality was illegal here, and all of that. So everybody's kind of that's an asinine argument, isn't it? Yes.
Because in 1966, homosexuality was illegal everywhere.
Right.
You know.
But England won the World Cup in 1966, so they must have done something right.
Yeah, so maybe we should make it illegal again.
Well, I mean, I was waiting for you to say that, because obviously I'm too frightened to say it, but, you know, these jokes cannot be made anymore, but we're just going to keep making them until they ban us from the air.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's like I was on the talk the other night, and luckily they realise now that some of the things I say are not entirely to be taken seriously, but we were talking about how when you get to 100 now, you don't get a telegram from the Queen anymore, obviously, but what you do get is a lovely photograph of King Charles and the Queen Consort and a message from the King. And then somebody said, yeah, well, the thing is, mostly it's women that get these now, because it's, you know, it's women who reach old age longer, you know, more often than men, because basically women are better than men at living. I said, well, that's because they don't work so hard. And, you know, normally that would have been greeted by howls of derision from the feminists, but actually they've started laughing at me now, which is actually a good thing.
But it's true.
Yes.
I mean, that's the reason there's a difference in the pensionable age and so on, you know, and all that kind of stuff. It's true. No, the thing about feminism, the rather wonderful thing about feminism, is that they are capable of what George Orwell called it double-think. It's actually with the feminists triple-think, which is they're able to think simultaneously, A, that women are subjugated by men, B, women are exactly the same as men, and C, women are better than men.
Right.
And they're able to think all of those three things simultaneously. And you hear it a lot from feminists, that we should have more female MPs because they're more consensual, they're less aggressive. We should have more female teachers, etc., because women are better. At the same time, they argue that there is no difference between men and women.
Yes.
You know,
it's a remarkable sort of problem that you have to get through, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, in your column today, you also write about the transgender cyclist. And quite rightly, you point out that a lot of sporting bodies are now realising that actually they might have been a bit too woke to begin with, and they're now going back the other way. Well,
when you hear Seb Coe, who strikes me as being a kind of plank of wood,
yes,
when it comes to sort of intellectual consideration of matters.
Yeah.
When you hear that even he is now saying, well, the Olympic Committee, he's boss of the Olympics, of course, is now saying that the Olympic Committee are going to come down and make a harder ruling now on transgender athletes, then you can see that the tide has completely changed. And I think the swimming guys, or swimming people, were first on this, but then the cyclists...
Amphibians, I think we call them.
Yeah. Amphibians, yes, that's right. No amphibians in our races. So the transgender, in the sporting arena, I think the transgender argument is being won quite rapidly, and certainly for people like Emily Bridges. You know, she's whether this affects cricket, I don't know. I know there was one cricketer who had a yearly average, like, of 15 runs. But then the next season, within a year, had had an average of 140 runs. Not by spending a lot of time in the nets, but by changing his name to Maxine,
right,
and playing exclusively against women.
And spending a lot of time in the fishnets, I think that's known as.
Very good. Yeah, you see, you get in there, and I didn't think of that one. That's very
good. I like that one. I thought I'm quite pleased with that.
Yeah.
But listen, we're going to talk in a moment about, speaking of planks, the great match of the day human rights special that went out at the start. I mean, I started watching the World Cup with no intention of really enjoying it, but I watched it because one of my kids wanted to watch the opening game. And I don't know if you would have seen the furore about Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer suddenly launching into this human rights watch kind of mode, where they told us all how terrible it all was, and they were really sorry that they were there, but they were there in order to highlight the problems in Qatar. But just hold that thought while I come back to you, because we've got to take a quick break. We're talking to Rod Liddle, columnist at The Sun and The Times, of course, and The Spectator. We're having a very interesting time of it, probably be banned by the time this segment is finished, so you might not see me for midday. But this is talkTV, and we are, of course, the home of free speech and common sense.